Have you ever found yourself watching Family Guy and thinking, that's probably a reference to something that I just don't understand? I know I have. So I've decided to make this series Every Reference in Family Guy Explained, where I'll go through every episode of Family Guy one by one and explain every reference one by one in great detail. Probably too much detail, to be honest with you, starting with the pilot. Death Has a Shadow. Without further ado, let's begin. We start right off the bat with a reference to The Brady Bunch, an American sitcom that ran from September of 1969 to March of 1974. It follows the Brady family, made up of Mike Brady, his 3 sons, Greg, Peter, and Bobby, Carol Martin, her 3 daughters, Marcia, Jan, and Cindy, and their housekeeper Alice, as they all live together in their 2-story suburban LA home after Mike and Carol marry, combining them all into one big Brady Bunch. The Griffins are watching a parody of the real-life 1971 Brady Bunch episode, Where There's Smoke, in which Greg gets caught smoking by Jan and Cindy. Next, we have a double reference to both Aunt Jemima, later rebranded in 2020 as the Pearl Milling Company, an American breakfast brand of syrup and pancake mix, as well as Jehovah's Witnesses, a denomination of Christianity who are famous for their evangelism, often being seen going door to door to spread their faith in the form of religious literature. We also have the intro theme to Family Guy, which is actually made up of a few references itself, namely the piano bit in the beginning being a parody of the opening to All in the Family, an American sitcom that ran from January 1971 to April 1979. The intro depicts the characters of Archie and Edith Bunker singing the show's theme at the piano, much like the Family Guy intro does with Peter and Lois. Fun fact: All in the Family was actually inspired by a British sitcom by the name of Till Death Do Us Part that aired from 1965 to 1975. According to the original showrunner, David Zuckerman, the second half of the Family Guy intro is inspired by a 1970 Campbell soup ad starring classic Hollywood musical actress Ann Miller, in which she breaks out into an ornate musical number in celebration of soup. I'll keep this one brief for obvious reasons, but next up we have a reference to a certain former German chancellor and dictator. Moving on. I'd also like to take a minute now to go into the inspiration behind Stewie Griffin's voice. Seth MacFarlane, series creator and voice of Stewie Griffin, has gone on record stating that he based Stewie's voice on English actor Rex Harrison, specifically his portrayal of Professor Henry Higgins in the 1964 musical drama My Fair Lady.
I find the moment that a woman makes friends with me, she becomes jealous, exacting, suspicious, and a damn nuisance.
Additionally, Peter Griffin's voice,
Without your thermostat,
who's also played by MacFarlane, is said to have been inspired by security guards that MacFarlane had overheard while attending the Rhode Island School of Design.
Ah, there's the office building now. High wages, here I am.
While Peter's personality was inspired by a friend of his father's who fell asleep at a screening of the 1993 film Philadelphia. More on this later.
whoa, ass ahoy.
The characters of both Peter and Brian Griffin are actually inspired by and loosely based on characters from one of Seth MacFarlane's previous animated shorts, 1995's The Life of Larry, followed by a sequel short in 1997 titled Larry and Steve. The titular Larry shares a voice with Peter.
Well, Steve, I hate to tell you this, but my card was declined.
As is the case with Larry's dog Steve and Peter's dog Brian.
So there you have it. Being with Larry is hazardous to my health.
All of these characters are voiced by Seth MacFarlane. Both Larry and Peter both have wives named Lois, but that's about where the similarities start and end for Lois Griffin and her counterpart. Next up, we have a scene in which Peter gets drunk off of communion wine. This is a reference to the Eucharist, a Christian sacrament which involves the consumption of bread and wine, as a means to consume both the body and blood of Jesus Christ, respectively.
Whoa, is that really the blood of Christ? Yes. Man, that guy must have been wasted 24 hours a day, eh?
This scene also makes reference to Job, the biblical figure from the book of Job, whose faith is tested by God in a series of grueling and punishing trials and tribulations, including losing all of his property, the death of his children, and suffering great physical agony. Fun stuff.
And so the Lord God smote poor Job with festering boils all over his body. Oh man, I hate it when he tells this story.
Next, we actually come back to the film Philadelphia. I told you we would.
I got it, that's the guy from Big.
A film starring Tom Hanks and Denzel Washington revolving around 2 attorneys, Andrew Beckett and Joe Miller, who team up in a lawsuit against Beckett's former law firm after Beckett is wrongfully let go after they discover he is a gay man diagnosed with AIDS. The film was inspired by the real-life cases of attorneys Jeffrey Bowers and Clarence Kane, who, much like Andrew Beckett, were wrongfully terminated by their employers after discovering their AIDS diagnoses. Later, we have a scene in which Peter hosts a stag party with his friends and watches Assablanca, the adult film parody of the 1942 classic Casablanca, starring Humphrey Bogart and Ingrid Bergman. They then cut to an educational program on the Statue of Liberty, an American monument originally constructed in France as a gift to the United States, then later erected in New York City in 1886. Next, we have a scene of the Griffins having breakfast. I'd like to take a moment now to talk about the inspiration behind Chris Griffin's design and voice.
A new family record. Way to raise the bar, Dad.
Chris somewhat resembles Milt, Larry's son in the previously mentioned Seth MacFarlane animated shorts. However, his voice is inspired by Ted Levine's portrayal of the fictional serial killer James Gum, otherwise known as Buffalo Bill, from the 1991 film Silence of the Lambs, which is based on the 1988 Thomas Harris novel of the same name.
It rubs the lotion on its skin or else it gets the hose again.
We have a number of real-life toys referenced, including G.I. Joe, an American media franchise and line of action figures owned and produced by the toy company Hasbro, parodied in this episode as G.I. Joe. The G.I. Joe franchise includes not only toys but a number of animated series and feature films throughout the years, starting in 1983 and extending to as recently as a cameo in the 2023 film Transformers: Rise of the Beasts, as well as having an upcoming film announced in 2024. There's also a reference made to Pound Puppies, parodied here as Pound Poochies, toy line of stuffed plush dog dolls. That's kind of hard to say. A toy line of stuffed plush dog dolls introduced in 1984 and produced by Tonka. There's also a reference to Baby Alive, seen here as Baby Heimlich, a series of dolls introduced by Kenner, now owned by Hasbro, in 1973. These baby dolls featured the ability to eat, drink, and, express bodily fluids. Just what every kid wants. Fuck PlayStation, I want a doll that vomits. Next, we have a scene featuring the iconic angel and devil over your shoulder imagery, representing the darker and kinder aspects of one's conscience. This symbology and its use in fiction actually dates back to 140 to 150 AD, in the Christian book, The Shepherd of Hermas. Quote, "There are two angels with a man, one of righteousness and the other of iniquity." Traffic permitting, of course.
Hey, where's the other guy?
Come on, you bastard. I'm late for work. Oh, this is perfect.
We also have a reference to Cocoa Puffs, an American cereal brand manufactured by General Mills and their mascot Sonny the Cuckoo Bird, and his slogan, "I'm cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs!" Later there's a reference to the Von Trapp family, a real-life Austrian family and musical group known as the Trapp Family Singers. They were active from 1935 to 1957 and actually were the basis of inspiration for the family featured in the 1965 musical film The Sound of Music, itself based on the 1959 Broadway musical of the same name, which in turn was inspired by the memoir of Maria von Trapp, the family's matriarch, titled The Story of the Trapp Family Singers. Next, and again I'll keep this brief, we have a reference to the famous Tank Man photograph from the Tiananmen Square protests and subsequent massacre that occurred in Beijing, China on June 5th, 1989. Next, we have a reference to Stop and Shop,
I'm going to Stop and Shop for some sweet corn.
an American regional grocery chain originating in 1892 in Boston, Massachusetts. They're common in New England, which is appropriate given the fact that the Griffin family lives in Rhode Island. We also have a reference to Jane Fonda's workout.
Peter, I do my Jane Fonda workout tape 3 times a week. When was the last time you saw your toad?
Otherwise known as Workout starring Jane Fonda, this was an at-home exercise instructional video starring American actress and activist Jane Fonda, released in 1982. The video was massively successful, selling 17 million videos from 1982 to 1995, and spawning a great number of imitation videos from other celebrities in an effort to follow in the wake of her success. Fun fact, Workout starring Jane Fonda is apparently the origin of the phrases "feel the burn" and "no pain, no gain."
Hey, man, I thought you people were supposed to be jolly.
We have a reference to Santa Claus. Do people really need me to explain Santa Claus? I'm happy to, it's just, I don't know, this one seems like really, really common knowledge. Let me know in the comments if you'd like me to go into a deep dive on things like Santa or like clearly obvious things like this. There's also a reference to former United States President Bill Clinton's sex scandal, in which he was found to be having a sexual affair with White House intern Monica Lewinsky while Clinton was serving as president. The scandal is famous for a number of reasons, not the least of which being former President Clinton's denial of the affair in a 1998 White House press conference.
I did not have sexual relations with that woman.
Later, Peter buys the statue of David, a world-famous marble sculpture crafted by Italian artist Michelangelo from 1501 to 1504 during the High Renaissance period. Originally commissioned for a series of 12 sculptures meant to be displayed along the rooftop of the Florence Cathedral, formerly known as the Cathedral of St. Mary of the Flower, in Florence, Italy, the statue of David ended up being displayed in the public square of the Palazzo Vecchio. I'm sorry, I'm not Italian. The statue of David ended up being displayed in the public square of the Palazzo Vecchio, the town hall of Florence. It replaced Donatello's bronze sculpture of Judith and the Holofernes, originally placed in 1495. The statue of David was later moved to the Galleria dell'Accademia in 1873, where it remains to this day. In 1910, a replica statue of David was installed at the original site in the public square. Then Peter Griffin buys it. Peter then hires Jerry Seinfeld as a jester. Seinfeld is an American comedian and actor, most famous for his sitcom, Seinfeld, which ran on NBC from 1989 to 1998. He's seen here in a parody of his trademark observational style stand-up comedy. Next, we have a reference made to the Kennedy family and their history of scandals.
Oh, no problem. We got the money to get that fixed, with enough left over for us to buy our way out of any trouble our kids might get into. Just like the Kennedys.
The Kennedys are an American political family with members including, but not limited to, the current, at the time of this video, United States Secretary of Health and Human Services, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., his father, former United States Attorney General and former U.S. Senator Robert F. Kennedy Sr., as well as his brother, 35th President of the United States, John F. Kennedy, otherwise known as JFK.
Need some beans for the chowder here.
We also have a reference to the Super Bowl, the annual championship game of the American Football League known as the National Football League, or better known as the NFL, hosted in this episode by famed broadcasting duo Pat Summerall and John Madden, who acted as a commentary team calling NFL games together on CBS and later Fox from 1979 to 2002, when Summerall retired from broadcasting. In the episode, Summerall makes reference to the 1975 Cotton Bowl Classic.
Have you ever seen anything like this, Pat? Pat?
Just once, John, the 1975 Cotton Bowl.
An American football game played between the NCAA Division I Baylor Bears and the Penn State Nittany Lions. Later in the episode, Fox security is seen shooting down Peter's blimp with a handgun marked with a sign reading "Just One Gun," referencing the at-the-time slogan of the Fox network, "Just One Fox," which ran from 1997 to 1999, the year Death Has a Shadow aired on Fox. Later, Peter is in prison and makes a reference to dropping the soap. I don't think I'm going to explain this one. You can Google it if you really don't understand it. Next, we have Stewie holding a box of grenades, which is not a reference. What is a reference, however, is his quoting "Life is like a box of chocolates."
Life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get.
From the 1994 film Forrest Gump, again starring Tom Hanks.
Tom Hanks, that's it. Funny guy, Tom Hanks. Everything he says is a stitch.
When Peter takes the stand, he makes reference to his favorite episode of Diff'rent Strokes.
My favorite episode of Diff'rent Strokes was on. You know the one where Arnold and Dudley get sexually molested by the guy who owns the bike shop?
Diff'rent Strokes was an American sitcom that ran on NBC from November 1978 to May 1985, and later on ABC from September 1985 to March of 1986. The series starred Gary Coleman and Todd Bridges as Arnold and Willis Jackson, respectively, two boys from Harlem taken in by wealthy businessman Philip Drummond, played by Conrad Bain. While I initially assumed this to be another example of classic Family Guy absurdist humor, the episode Peter references is actually based on a real-life two-part 1983 episode of Diff'rent Strokes titled The Bicycle Man, which went on to popularize the trend of very special sitcom episodes that deal with heavier social topics very seriously compared to the lighter comedic tone of the overall series. This one in specific dealing with exactly what Peter describes in Death Has a Shadow, albeit with more grace than what's depicted in Family Guy.
And everybody learns a valuable lesson.
The scene also marks not only a reference, but the first appearance of a running gag in Family Guy, the Kool-Aid Man bursting through the wall and shouting, "Oh yeah!" The Kool-Aid Man, sometimes referred to as the Kool-Aid Guy or Captain Kool-Aid or Big Thirst. I've never heard that before. Is the official mascot for Kool-Aid, a brand of flavored drink mix. First introduced in July of 1954 as the Pitcher Man, with the ever-classic catchphrase,
"A 5-cent package makes 2 quarts."
Just rolls right off the tongue. It wasn't until 1974 that he began to take on the more familiar shape and catchphrase we know him for today. Oh yeah! Since then, he's gone on to mark his place firmly in the annals of pop culture, claiming comic books and even 2 video games featuring Mr. Big Thirst prominently front and center. Finally, we have a scene featuring the Griffin family watching TV's Bloopers and Practical Jokes, an American television series hosted by Ed McMahon and Dick Clark. The program initially started from a series of 2 separate TV specials titled TV's Censored Bloopers, hosted by Dick Clark, starting on May 1981, and the Television's Greatest Commercial Specials, which started in May of 1982 and were hosted by McMahon. Both specials were individually well received by audiences, later leading to the combined special in 1984 titled TV's Greatest Censored Commercial Bloopers. It was then decided to combine the 2 programs into one weekly series, hosted by both Clark and McMahon together. Here we have a parody of a blooper from the American sitcom Joanie Loves Chachi, which aired on ABC from March 1982 to May of 1983, starring Erin Moran as Junie Cunningham and Scott Baio as Chachi Arcola. The short-lived series was actually a spin-off of another American sitcom titled Happy Days, which ran for 11 seasons from January 1974 to July of 1984. Conversely, Joanie Loves Chachi only ran for 17 episodes, being canceled in its second season. The two characters and their actors would return to Happy Days following the cancellation. This is followed by Peter mentioning another harebrained money-making scheme in attempting to acquire a minority scholarship.
I sure am gonna miss being rich.
Now, don't worry, I got a way to get money.
Not another welfare scam.
No. Minority scholarship.
Referencing the plot of the 1986 American comedy film Soul Man, starring C. Thomas Howell as a white college student who uses tanning pills to pose as a black man in order to receive a scholarship. Yeesh. The film is dated to say the least, and was not without criticism at the time of its release. And with that, we round out Death Has a Shadow with a total of 37 references in 22 minutes, averaging 1.68 references per minute. Did I miss any references? Are there any I misinterpreted? Should I reel in the scope of this project and ignore things like the Statue of Liberty or Santa Claus? Or would you prefer I go even deeper and explore the long and rich history of Santa Claus? What other shows or films do you think deserve to have their every reference explained? Please let me know in the comments, and please subscribe for more if you enjoyed this video and want to see more like it. Join me next time when I explore every reference in Season 1, Episode 2 of Family Guy, I Never Met the Dead Man. Bye!